Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pass the Noise podcast, which we host every Wednesday at 7 p.m. It's just an open forum discussion. We throw out a topic and we look to have an interactive discussion with our audience. Myself and my co-host, Apostle T.B. Walker, who I'm bringing in now. We certainly thank you for joining us this evening. And again, just a reminder that we welcome your comments. I'll be throwing a call-in link in the comments section shortly. So if you want to call in, have your voice heard, make comments, questions, whatever the case may be, please feel free to do that. All of our episodes are on YouTube and our Facebook page. So if you want to look at past episodes, you missed some, you can go to either our YouTube page, just do a search for Pass the Noise, and we're there. So again, we thank you for joining us tonight. We're looking forward to having a great discussion as always.
Absolutely.
It's the topic for tonight is cancel culture. It's a broad topic, and we're going to discuss some specific instances of cancel culture. But first, we're just going to talk about it, generally speaking. So we're going to start there. But first, Apostle, just want to check and see how you're doing tonight.
I am doing fantastic. As always, I'm really excited about what we're talking about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even I should have checked that. How many episodes have we done so far? Do you know?
This is 18. This is
number 18. It's amazing. And I mean, I'm just thinking about because I was thinking a little earlier. I was like, man, I think this was 15 or 16. I can't believe it's 18. And it just seemed like this happened overnight.
Yeah.
But there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack out there, man. There's a lot of noise, and we just really need to get past it, get down to the real issues.
It is. And it's something new every week. Some new things that we can't even do them all. We
right.
We can choose what topic we're going to cover because there's so much going on in the world and so many things that just people are just screaming about, but not really talking about. They're not really having nuanced, calm, sort of rational, reasoned conversations, which is what we try to do here. We try to have rational, reasoned conversations.
Right.
And again, we welcome an input from people who are watching because this is a conversation. These are not lectures. We're both Christians. I'm Elder Michael Hightower. He's the Apostle T.B. Walker. These are not Bible studies.
Right.
These are conversations. So we're looking to have a full-blown conversation, agreement, disagreement, different points of view, different perspectives. It's all good. So that's what we're looking to do in these conversations. Now, last week we talked about indirectly Kanye West.
Right.
And his issues with effectively being canceled. He made comments. He's made comments about, in general, about slavery and about Jewish people. And they basically, came for his businesses, came for his relationships, came for his money and for his reputation. And so that's an ongoing thing that he's having to deal with in terms of that. We didn't sort of presented as cancel culture, but it is part of what we're going to describe as cancel culture. And just generically, cancel culture is basically just people being shunned or ostracized from society for something they've said or done that is, in people's eyes, so offensive that they no longer deserve to have a job, be able to earn a living, or whatever the case is, because what they've done is so offensive. But I think it's important to point out that cancel culture as such is not new.
Right.
As long as you've had societies, you've had banishments, right? You get out of the village and you don't come back. Well, 1620, you leave one village, you go to another one. No one knows you. So whatever you did in the other village doesn't follow you. But now you can cancel somebody basically worldwide, everywhere, every country, every continent, on social media. Boom, this person is done. So it's a lot different, but it's the same sort of thing where society is sort of determining who's fit to live among us, who's fit to have certain positions or whatever. And that's sort of how cancel culture is working right now. In terms of what people are looking for. I think it started, I think the biggest, most popular thing, cancel culture, was Me Too.
Right.
Which was really payback, right? It's payback for decades, to me it was centuries, of women being mistreated, being harassed, being sexually abused, and all that kind of stuff. And it was their chance to speak up and say, we're not going to take this anymore. And anybody who's doing this or has done it, will now be canceled, whether it be currently or retroactively. Because
right.
We have the internet, you have all this stuff. You can cancel people, and we'll talk about that later. But you can cancel people retroactively or for things that in the past. So we saw a lot of that during the Me Too movement, and it's really it's scary, but it's really it's not a thoughtful environment. It's just if I disagree with you, if you said something that's like, I don't like that, then I can make an effort to cancel you.
Right.
And I think it's definitely reached a point where it's gone too far. I think because there's no. I mean, normally when you call somebody for doing something, right, something offensive or something you think is bad, there's a process of restoration. Okay, you've done this thing, you apologize, you do this, you make amends, you hug it out, you do whatever. Canceling is just eliminating. Like, you're done, you're gone.
Right.
Like, you don't have a chance to make a comeback. You're just out. And I think that's one of the dangerous sides of cancel culture is there's no room for forgiveness. And as Christians, that's the opposite of what we're taught to do. We're taught you're supposed to forgive. You're supposed to try to restore your brother or your sister if they've offended you. It's not they offended me and you are done. I am done with you today. That's sort of the complete polar opposite. And so we know that it's not healthy and it's certainly not godly. But I think just in general, it's just a very dangerous sort of really a bad place to be. I think it's only going to get worse. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you. I think one of the things about cancel culture that's, I think, really, really dangerous is that cancel culture doesn't just deal with where you are and what you've done now. It goes back and it really looks back in the past arenas. And here's one of the things about the past. You can learn from the past. I'm a believer in history. But one of the damaging things about past is that you can't change it, right? It's kind of set in stone. So, once I determine that anyone who does or has ever done this thing, that they're not redeemable, that they just have to be thrown in the trash. I'm not sure who could really withstand. I'm not sure who could withstand the Me Too movement today. Well, not just Me Too, cancel culture.
Sure,
Paul, Jesus would probably be be canceled for what he didn't say. I never heard you say anything about slavery. You didn't stand up for the women when they were abusing them. When with the issue of blood, your only issue was the law. You never said that she shouldn't be stoned. So you're still for violence. So I'm not sure who could stand up to the scrutiny of scrubbing their past.
Nobody. I mean, nobody could do that. And the reason why, it's so important to be able to forgive people is that people can change and people can change their perspective and people can learn and grow from their mistakes. Like the things I did when I was 18, you hope you're not making the same mistakes when you're 38, 48, 58. And because you have a teenager's mind, you do teenager mind type stupid stuff. And I would hate if somebody go back to my teens and pull out stuff that I did. Most people would be mortified by that. I guess to a certain extent, today's teenagers are used to that. But it was still like they don't think about it. I don't think they think about the fact that everything you do, especially on social media, recorded somewhere forever. So it's out there somewhere if you've done something. And so, that's just not the way to, I think, to treat other people. And one of the things that cancel culture does is it lumps everyone into the same thing, right? So if let's just say I'm at work and I made an inappropriate joke about a woman, right? I said something inappropriate to a woman.
Right.
I'm just like Kevin Spacey. I'm just like Matt Lauer. I'm like, I just made one mistake. I did one thing. They were accused of multiple things, but the point is, once you're in that category, you're just like them and you deserve the same fate that they got. And also, I think that that's incredibly dangerous to do that, because if you're going to examine someone's behavior, it should be case by case. Like examining the totality. Okay, they never done anything like that before. That's not something I would expect from them. This seems out of character, and then you appropriate. They apologize, and you act appropriately based on their past conduct and what have you. It's not one strike you're out. I mean, that's excessive. And another thing that makes it dangerous is who's going to decide who gets canceled and who doesn't. And the answer is whoever, right? It's just, as things shift and things change, that things that don't get canceled today might get canceled tomorrow.
Right. Well, I guess, in some ways society decides it, right? I mean, I
Right.
guess, if you look at the Amish and Mennonite culture, right, there's
Mm-hmm.
the idea of shunning,
Right.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
this idea of shunning is not just done by the individual. The
Right.
society kind of already has a list of things that are shun worthy, right?
Mm.
And so we're kind of developing things that, like, okay, if you make a comment, I can take, an inappropriate comment about a woman.
Right.
I will use that. And now the question then, what you said was, has he ever done that before? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it moves us to now looking at the body of your life or time in the workplace. Well, as we go back, there are people now that we kind of look at and say, okay, that one inappropriate comment, and he's not really done that before, he's not worthy of canceling. The question with the Kevin Spacey, okay, seems like it's historical. Weinstein seems like this is historical.
Right.
So now, if it's historical and you're in it now, that's, I think, the problem with cancel culture, is that it doesn't really accept any apology. Even if we find it in your past, which you cannot change, and in your present, which you have now done, it doesn't, there's really not a path forward, because I don't think cancel culture wants restoration. We're really looking to really pluck out bad apples and throw them away. Because can we, and let's be honest, can we see Weinstein repenting? And do we want him to? Has he done a pedophile? We have areas in our communities already where we don't look at it as canceling, but like once he moves to the neighborhood, he's effectively canceled as a member of the neighborhood. So he's done like 12 years in prison. He's on the lifetime registry. But the truth of the matter is, isn't that same guy canceled? Then we look and say, now that's the 1 yard that if the ball goes in that yard, they have the ball. That's it. They just got another ball because you're not going over there. I don't even want you in there. So in some ways, this cancel culture is really in our society. It's just becoming larger now than ever. But we've kind of selectively been canceling select groups of people, homosexuals, for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, this now just become a concerted effort to now all across the board because of the internet, because of our ability to connect. We now can not just come against that one guy who lives on 123 Main Street, but it's him and all the other guys who are like him. So I'll take my 10 guys in my city, but I'm expecting the rest of the people to ban anyone like that in their cities. And I think that's where it can really, really get dangerous, because we don't see restoration.
Right. No, we don't. I mean, I think it's meant to punish. It's just punitive.
Sure.
It's just punishment and nothing else. There's nothing else.
But let me ask you, do you see that? Is that wrong? I mean, at the end of the day, here's a guy who's a racist, right? And he goes on a racist rant, and he's had racist rants before, and all of his literature and documents are racist. Okay, do we want to punish him? Does society have a role in preserving and protecting its own sense of integrity?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, it does. I mean, every society has to decide,
what's acceptable.
Yeah, what we accept and what behavior we won't accept, and people largely know what those things are. You can't say certain things. You can't say certain things to or about certain people. You can't touch people in certain ways if you don't, whether you know them or not. I mean, we know that, so we know pretty much where the lines are. It's just that sometimes, like for instance, people in power, the line's not blurred. They don't care. they just do whatever they want and say you can't do anything. And so again, going back to the Me Too movement, sort of what happened there was, now it's like, now we can get to you. Now there's no wall there. Now we can reach in, grab you, drag you out, and give you some of what you gave us. So now those things are gone. But yeah, I mean, you've always had this sort of balance between powerful and people with no power. People with no power to take whatever whatever the rich and or powerful doled out, and couldn't say anything about it. You can complain about it, but you couldn't do anything to them. Now they can do. Now society can do something to those people that they weren't expected to be able to do.
And you know what I mean? I'm not sure if I'm not sure if we've always known. I mean, in some cases, when you look at for instance, the Me Too movement, it's as silly as it may appear, and I think it sounded kind of silly and immature. But I think there were a lot of men who had come from a time where this line wasn't blurred. Like it really wasn't there. It wasn't. You know, I mean, the idea of like patting a waitress on her behind as she left, or saying, you know, come here, hon. You know, sweetie. You know, that was kind of regular. You know, we kind of talked. You know, I think we had a segment on that where, you know, you see the Rhett Butler and he kisses Scarlett O'Hara, and you know, and it was kind of like that's romance. So you kind of have a generation of men. In some ways, the Me Too movement kind of had to train a society that was really misogynistic, sexist, and really didn't have a line that in some ways Me Too drew the line. And in some ways, when you have a society, for instance, that is racist and that has come out of legalized racism in the country, and then in the 70s, kind of still there, don't you have to look in the 90s and the 2000s and say, okay, you guys are used to saying that. Okay, that we now need to draw a line because there was no line there. And so some of these cancel cultures are really designed to draw lines where there was no line.
Sure. So I think that there's a difference between right and wrong, and then what society accepts, because society will accept some things that are wrong. But while those wrongs have been accepted, then there is sort of like, how accountable do we hold people for things that were socially acceptable? To be given something of a pass. So I think you look back and you say, that was crazy, but you don't go back and punish the people who were doing it.
Right.
You say, don't do that again. That's no longer acceptable. And you see it across the board. There's a bunch of things that you could do then that you can't do now. I mean, if you watch almost any movie, almost any TV show in any genre, you will see inappropriate remarks made about gender, race, ethnicity, across, and they just say it like it's no big deal. You're like, did they just really say that? You listen to it now, you're like, I can't believe that was just like at some point just real comments, but it just was. But at some point it wasn't, and people stopped doing it. Right? At some point, once the line is drawn, you have to stop. You don't get to keep doing it because we've always been able to do it. I think that was the other thing that happened, was that, okay, guys, enough's enough. But then people kept doing it because this is what I've always done. I've always had a casting couch. What are you talking about? But at some point, you gotta be aware of your surroundings and say, casting couches are no longer acceptable, and I gotta stop.
Or we'll cancel you. I think that they can't. They had to have the whip, right? I mean, you got to. Yeah, please don't do it. Stop doing that. But then there had to be, okay, we will. Nobody's going to watch your movies anymore. And I wonder, in reality, would it have stopped without it? I think cancel culture is dangerous, but I wonder, and I think it's gone, way, way, way too far. But I wonder if would that have stopped? Would men have looked at this? Would you have gotten the apologies that you got? And would people have looked back on their own past character and to say, hey, you know what? I made some mistakes there. Because I do see some positives, but I do think that there's a lot of negatives there where it can be used now as a weapon to just destroy people and their careers and their reputation simply because of a small group and not really even the majority. They just might have a larger voice.
There's some positives, and then there's excesses, right? So there's excesses where people are they're just trying to hurt people. They're not trying to prove a point. They just, you're getting payback. And it ends there. It begins and ends with, I'm getting payback.
Right.
And moving on to the next one. Who else needs payback? And then that's all there is to it. But the essence of it was necessary. The essence of drawing lines and saying, no, you can no longer do this, or was absolutely necessary, because no, it wouldn't have stopped. And we saw when you had the line, it still didn't stop in some cases, because again, guys felt like, I'm too rich, too powerful. I'm running this. I'm running this studio. You can't counsel me. I'm too big to cancel. And in some instances, when they thought they were, they underestimated the power of people being able to come together on the internet and have a collective, focused effort on you.
Right.
Not like we come one day and then we're going next week, which is what they're used to, right? You come, you protest, and they go away. We're not going away because I can do this from home. There's no coming and going. Just like, I'm on Twitter. It's like, and another one, the next day. And so it's a constant pounding until either you or your employer or your business partners, whatever, say, we can no longer tolerate your presence at the institution because now you're dragging us all down. So there's also, that part of it as well.
Well, you're right. You're right. Absolutely. And we're seeing that with, Kanye We seeing that with Kyrie Irving. We're seeing it all over the place. Yeah. Matter of fact, you asked a question about how far back do you go? I think you have a clip. And I do. I want, because I think that's a major question in terms of, what you did yesterday has a lot to do with today. But like, how far do we go back? How far is that? We look at the Confederate monuments, or any person, and the thought that this guy wrote a great document, and we live by that document to this day. But he did have slaves, so let's scrap him. Right. I wonder how far back do we go? But you go ahead. I know you got.
No, I mean it's an excellent question. I'm throwing the call link in the chat, and if someone wants to, I'd love to hear some people's feedback on this question as we go to this. It's actually not a clip. It's a series of screenshots. So let's go ahead and bring that up. So what you're referring to is was a sports reporter in Tennessee, Casey Funderburg. So let's walk through Casey's stuff. So here's a picture of Casey. You can see she's a 26-year-old Caucasian woman. She was a sports reporter, sideline reporter for University of Tennessee Sports.
Go Balls.
Yeah. There was a tweet set out from this spoof account or whatever you call it. What do I call it? Joke account or whatever. That said this. Said Tennessee announcing dark mode, black clothes and black face, right? Obvious racial implications. Casey took exception to it and said, what are we doing here? This is crazy. This is disgraceful. This is disgusting. Don't pay this any attention. This is off the wall. And of course, because we live in the age of the internet, someone found tweets from Casey where she refers to herself as a nigga. And so that's what happened. And so the first one says, I'm called nigga more than once on a daily basis. I mean, it's crazy. And it says, you mean little nigga. And then the last one was, please don't let your nigga down. I mean, then we saw a picture of Casey. We know what Casey looks like. Now, here's the thing. Casey's 26 years old. She graduated from high school 8 or so years ago. These tweets were sent when she was in high school, 2013, 2014. They are at least 8 years old. There were no other tweets that anyone knows about between 2013, 2014, and 2022 where she has said anything racially derogatory. She's made any inappropriate tweets or anything. She was working as a professional sportscaster. And now she essentially canceled herself before she resigned before they came at her. But that is really the question. How far back is too far? Like did they go too far back in order to play a game of gotcha with it? Now there is some irony here because you can say she started it because she went after the joke account. So it's kind of ironic that I guess I'm sure she wasn't thinking about that when she made her tweet. But again, the internet, what's it saying? The internet doesn't forget, and the internet didn't forget. And so it is an interesting question about how far back. Now, for me, it's too far. To me, something somebody did in high school when they're working post-college in the profession, buying their own business, like what they did. There's no history in between that. It's too far. It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question. I mean, I would love to hear, other people's opinions on this because I think it's tough. Because it does a lot. The question is about your character, right? The question. So, let me give another hypothetical. If this were her sophomore year in college, would it be different? Is she expected to know more, or is this a mistake? No matter where you are, but it's in the past, and I guess all the mistakes are in the past, right? I mean, I think all of those things as you look at that are not done now are in the past, and it does, bring the question of what's the point that we look at people and see them as not fully formed adults.
So here's the thing. So whether it was high school, middle school, or college, there should be repercussions. So we're not talking about
not doing anything.
Go bye-bye. She should have apologized or should have had to apologize, which she did. and there should have been, maybe, criticism and whatnot of her. But that's a far cry from then you lose your job. Like there's a
Right.
big difference between I'm sorry, that's up to an employer to decide, ultimately, is she really sorry? But the question is that too much in terms of does the punishment fit the crime? And I say no. Now, if it happened in college, that's a little closer to where she is now. You expect someone who's in college, who's meeting all kinds of different people from different backgrounds, to be a little more worldly, a little more sensitive to other people than maybe you were in high school. I don't know where she went to high school. Maybe she went to a high school that wasn't integrated. She didn't know a lot of other people. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
Right.
But the closer you get to her 26-year-old self, it becomes perhaps more problematic. But I also think people deserve a chance to explain yourself, explain these
Right.
tweets.
Well, now, of everything, I think that's the thing that for me is the scariest part, because cancel culture is one thing, and I think that's damaging. But when you get people to cancel themselves when they're so afraid that they don't explain themselves, there's no, they already assume that there's no place in the public forum where they could possibly explain themselves, because we live in an unforgiving environment, an unforgiving world. And then again, and a world of great memory that will go back to MySpace to get some things that you posted on MySpace. I think that, the danger here is that people are, what I'm saying? That people are really running out, and they're jumping off the ledge before they're ever being pushed. And I think that's the danger, that cancel culture now doesn't have to actually actively cancel anybody. People now are going to take it upon themselves. And you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and resign. And you're seeing that more and more. That without even I'm going to make the apology, but I assume that the apology is not enough. And I think that's the problem, is that there really isn't a path to redemption. Once you do certain things in this society now, there really isn't a path to redemption other than time. When you look at Mel Gibson, he came in like right before the real cancellation time with his rants. So Mel Gibson waited out time. Eventually, Passion of the Christ, Apocalypto, he started directing some other things, and eventually he was able to get it back in front of the camera. Louis C.K. was a part of the cancel culture, right? Yeah. And so he again had to wait it out. And I think time, and then Louis C.K. just had a special, right, in 2021. So they're able to come back. And I think at the end of the day, what's being found is that it's easier just to cancel yourself and wait it out. And then eventually she'll show up on ESPN 4 years from now, and nobody will remember. And that becomes the way. I'll just kill myself first. I'll kill my career. I'll just shoot my reputation in the head. But a flesh wound, so it won't die. It just will look like it's dead for a while, and then the bear will leave and let me go, and then I'll come back later on. I think it's really dangerous that's probably now going to be the playbook.
Well, I think probably, I'm kind of getting in her head, but probably what she was thinking was, to your point, no apology is going to be enough, and they're not going to let up until I'm gone. They're not going to let up until something bad happens to me, until I'm publicly humiliated and dragged through the mud. Nothing's going to satisfy the mob until that happens. Now,
and UT is forced to do something about her high school self.
Right, and. What she tweeted was offensive, and the fact that it was said like in a casual, conversational way does give you pause to question her mindset about those things. It wasn't like, this was casual conversation with people. So there is, again, it was offensive, but still, I would have liked to have heard her explanation.
Well, some of it, but some of it is also, she was in high school. That's how she was. That's what she thought. Some of it takes us having some empathy and understanding and remembering where we were in high school. Remember our own views. When somebody said something about abortion, that if we could have written it down. If somebody said something about a girl or a guy, man, if they had written down everything we said and thought, racist things that we said and thought, but weren't trying to be racist. Really kind of thought it was like real. That's how they are. That's what they do. Regurgitate, but you're a kid. And I think in lots of ways, we kind of forget the immaturity that's connected to this time. I think we have to give passes for the time. I think that, as a Bible teacher, I'm constantly telling people about the history because people are saying, yeah, but like, why would he do that to his wife? You know, and like, he never said anything about slavery. You know, why would Paul ask this guy to come back into slavery? That's not cool. Well, you know, we forget the time.
Right.
As we progress, we forget that people are products of their time. And when there's a time when that's acceptable, I don't know that we can hold them to modern day standards. You know, they're just things that were, you know, I remember a picture of Lyndon Johnson, and he had a beagle. And Lyndon Johnson grabbed the beagle by the ears and he lifted him up. And he was playing. But you know, when you have dogs, I had beagles growing up. You can play with dogs. Well, the movement later on, people looked at that as abusive. They held that picture up like, who holds a dog up by its ears? Well, in the 60s, some people did. That's, you know, we didn't see animals in the same way. Is he an abusive guy? Should Lyndon Baines Johnson's memorial library be burned to the ground? You know, because I mean, does he hate animals? He loved that beagle. It wasn't in the way that we love today. I wonder if we give way to the realizing that there's something in progress, that when we change, progress though has to encompass the idea that they weren't there. We're here now, but they weren't there. That's not the way they saw women. So they weren't there. It wasn't a weird thing for, you know, granddaddy to sit at the table and look around and say, you know, where's my food? You know, he didn't lift a finger. Now, okay, so should we now look and say, I'm going to take his urn and pour his ashes out in the trash? Because, I mean, I can't believe that he treated grandma that way. I think we've gone too far and not realizing, hey, we need to really look and realize he was a man of his time.
Yeah.
He simply did not know anything different. And that takes compassion. And I'm not sure,
Absolutely.
I think in a society that's drained of compassion, I'm not sure we really have that.
Not now. Not now we don't. We did it. I think we did. I think we don't, as much less now if we ever had some. We have some comments.
Okay.
Bring them up. Sean Fader says, I think that we all have joked around and probably said some inappropriate things. And she clearly recognized that the suggestion of fans painting their face black was wrong. I think we should allow for youthful ignorance.
Yeah, and I think, you know what? I mean, I think she's right. And I think that one of the things is that look at the distraction. I mean, it takes away from the blackface. The real issue was the joke about the blackface, right? That becomes, let's not deal with a modern day right now, you know, black uniform and blackface. And let's go back to high school and check her and say, how dare you say the right thing? How dare you be right now in your life right now? How dare you say the thing that you should say when you didn't say it when you were 17? I think that's a backwards thing, and we don't really recognize change in people.
No, and you could argue that her attacking the blackface tweet was a sign of her growth. It was a sign that she didn't feel the same way. You could certainly make that argument, and she probably would have if she had felt like she could make an argument, but you know, she didn't. So.
Well, look how many people in the Me Too movement came out and they're like, people were like, I mean, I love this guy. I mean, he's such a nice guy. And the guy was like, hold on, you know what? In 2011, I did kiss this woman one time, probably a little more forcefully than I should have. Let me apologize because I'm a jerk. And so it just, the reality that even the testimony of the right now, where I like, this guy's great, I've never been mistreated, there's a sense of guilt that I think is placed upon people about what was done in the past that you can't get over because you simply can't erase it. And when you're now can't erase what you did then, like as a society, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me of who was it? Al Franken. With the whole, he was doing a comedy skit and he forcibly kissed a woman, and apparently it was a one-time thing, but it wasn't even why I mean, at the time he was a sitting U.S. senator. It was before he was a senator, and he felt like he was forced to resign his United States. Yeah, he canceled himself, more or less. So it's because I think he knew that it was going to be relentless. Like he saw the tsunami coming. Like, let me step out of the way of this thing before it just runs me over. Which is, it's crazy and sad. We have another comment. Kyrie says, I agree. To go back that far, and they have shown changes in their character and behavior, why punish people for what they have done 8, 10, 40 years ago? It's it's sort of a sport now, right? It's sort of like you say something, you come, this is crazy, this is wrong, and people like, okay, let me fire up the internet and see what they've said, 10 years
Right.
ago. I mean, it's just there's no statute of limitations on the internet because everything that you've done unsaid on social media is somewhere to be viewed. And so if somebody's motivated to go and look for those things, I mean, they'll find them. I mean, I guess for better or for worse, when I was a teenager, there was no internet, so
Right.
nothing to go back and find. So yeah, so there's that. So technology cuts both ways, but yeah, it's too again, it's too far back. It's too far back, and it's too much. In the comment, Clarice says, if you're checking MySpace, you should cancel your.
Well, you listen. I mean, here's the crazy thing. You know what? If you're checking MySpace and it works, then you can't cancel yourself. See, here the problem is, as funny as that is, and I think she's right. You really need to cancel if you're going back that far. But here's the thing: we dig back into the. I mean, like we look at Martin Luther King, and there are people who are looking and saying, "Well, let's relook at his legacy," because I heard he liked the white women and he had a foot fetish, and I heard he smoked cigarettes. So I guess all the civil rights stuff didn't matter, and like he was married, so he committed adultery with these women, and so when you look at that, I think that the way that way of judging people really lacks empathy, and I think that that's what we're really seeing. This is really the movement. I don't think was designed to be that way, but I think what it does is it really allows us to be able to see he lives without sin. Let him cast the first stone. Nobody really could stand up against the scrutiny of of cancel culture. I don't think anybody could. No minister who I imagine there are about 10 sermons that somebody will find and say, now that smacked of racism right there. Oh, that smacked of sexism right there. Oh, I didn't like that. That sounded like too much about money. So I mean, who could? And guess what? Some of them could be right. We grow.
Right.
I was thinking that way then. I mean, there's no way around it. That's what I thought. Paul said, right? I actually blasphemed. I thought that way then. But that was forgiving me because I did it in ignorance. I don't think we understand the ignorance. I don't think we realize that ignorance is not like I was being ignorant. Ignorance is like I really didn't know. I honestly really thought that's the way that was supposed to go. I wanted, separation of the schools. I really thought that. But now that I've changed that, why are we applauding change? Why don't we look and say, wow, it worked. You've turned around. No, now I want to whip you for, yeah, you turned around, but I'm not giving you any kudos for turning. What about what you did when you were 12?
Right. Yeah, the cancel culture has no feeling, right? It's not about it's not even really about correcting behavior and making people think about their behavior and being better. It's pure punishment. It's pure, we're knocking you out. First one punch knockout, and then we drag you out the ring.
And I guess some deserve that, right? There's some that need that punishment, but I think it's just the brush is too broad.
It's just everybody, right? Everybody. It's not just, like I said, there's no subtlety, there's no nuance, there's no examination, because that would take work. Like I got to examine this person's record and say, this is who this person is, this is who they've been. Apology, maybe we can work with this guy, but it's easier just to lump them all in the same basket and say we're done with everybody. That's just easier. It probably feels better if you're mad, right? If you're angry and you're trying to get payback, that feels good. We took them all out in one fell swoop. We got rid of all of them. So yeah, I mean, and you think about human nature, that's right up our alley. Yeah, I can take all my enemies, all the people I don't know. I'm good with that. I don't have time to sort through this one and that one, and this one didn't really mean it, or this was taken out. I don't have time to take the context. I don't care about context. I'm looking at the black and white, what's on the page in black and white, and then I'm moving off of that, and we're good.
Right. Yes,
no subtlety at all. We have a comment. Chavez says, when you are being vetted for the most important positions in our government, they will go back as far as middle school if the information is available. I also think it's too far, but I would also consider what the offense is or was. No, I think if it's something that would potentially keep you or make you ineligible for, say, a security clearance or something like that, some criminal behavior or some other, you had some a mental issue or something. That's fair. They're trying to determine how you will behave in the future based on how you behave in the past. But there's also a middle part of that where they talk to you, where they sit down and evaluate you, where you do a polygraph. They have you see a psychiatrist, so they do other things. It's not just look at this, we're good, thank you, have a nice day. It's like you see these things and like, so tell me again why you didn't, because there's a bunch of stuff. Like I've had a polygraph. There's a bunch of stuff that they ask you about your finances, your personal life, or this or that. It's like they'll give you a chance. If there's something like they don't like, they'll say, well, tell me about that. Tell me what was going on in your life at that time. Tell me what happened with this. There's a question and answer period where you get to present yourself in your case as, I screwed up. I screwed up back then. I made a mistake and I did this. But I'm not like that. You get a chance to redeem yourself. There's no redemption in the cancel culture thing.
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree.
But for sure, they may find something that they feel would disqualify you for certain positions. Like I'm not going to like authorize you to have a weapon if I feel like your behavior in the past makes you irresponsible with weapons. I mean, that's like just like if you've embezzled, I'm not hiring you as my accountant. I mean, that's fair. Right? I'm not necessarily going to not hire you at all, but you're not over the money, right? If you have embezzled in the past, that not off the bat. So yeah, so there's again, but you're looking at the person sort of trying to sort it out rather than just discarding them. And let's see another comment. She says it wouldn't be too far if you look back at high school and found a reformed school shooter. No, so that is an example of something that would disqualify you from a lot of positions, and rightfully so. But
that's felony, right?
That's a felony. So a felony is like, yes, some things you'll be immediately disqualified, but it doesn't mean you can't work at all. Just you can't work in certain jobs, you can't get certain kinds of clearances, you can't get in certain government buildings. I think as a protection for other people as well. I think that's fair. I think that's absolutely fair. They're trying to predict. Now, some cases they'll be wrong. Like some cases, the people who have committed the most heinous espionage never saw him coming. Nicest guy in the world. He always came to work on time. He was here on time so he could steal information. So, but they didn't see him coming. So it's predictive, but it's not absolutely predictive. But yeah, there could be things that would disqualify you from that. And that's the government, not like individual people making decisions about whether or not you could be in society based on something you said that offended them, not necessarily criminal or something that was dangerous or deadly. Just that I don't think we say about women.
Right. And I think we have to really look at our sense of our sense of indignation, the ease in which we're offended. I mean, as a culture. Man, some of this cancel culture really is connected to our, I don't know that we just want freedom of speech. We don't like to see people express themselves in ways that we're uncomfortable. So in some ways, we were unable to, to really deal with the idea that we have competing views and that we have views that, everybody doesn't actually agree with. So, I mean, that person who says, I don't like fat women, right? Mm-hmm. Now we can cancel, we'll cancel that person. It's like, yeah, you were talking against her. What about the beauty of Lizzo? Well, listen, what if I don't think Lizzo is healthy, right? I mean, should I be crucified because I'm looking and saying, nah, I don't think that's good. I don't want a woman who looks like that. And I think she needs to lose 150 pounds. Now, does that mean I'm the worst person in the world? And I think the idea of looking at freedom of speech, the speech costs today.
Right.
It's not free, man. Speech costs you. It's major, which is why you have to parse your words so carefully, and you really can't give your thoughts and opinions because they get set in stone now with the internet.
Forever, absolutely. If you comment, and then I'm going to respond to that. They may also qualify you to be canceled from society. It could. I mean, yeah, school shooting or some heinous crime. Absolutely, that could cause you to be canceled. But I'm not saying that we should never cancel anybody.
Right.
It's just this knee jerk. As soon as somebody does something outside of a criminal act, we go off the deep end. Then your point about the extent to which people are easily offended. I mean, people are easily offended to your point where they are. So if you are Lizzo, right, you take offense at anyone who says anything that you perceive in your mind
right.
as being fat shaming, whatever the case may be. You might just be trying to help her, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're trying to help her because it's not perceived that way.
Right.
And yeah, and I don't want to dig into the thing about freedom of speech. And let's talk about Kyrie, because we want to talk about Kyrie Irving.
Okay.
Brooklyn Nets guard who didn't actually say, he tweeted a link to a movie that is considered anti-Semitic.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was called on it and he refused to apologize. And initially, interestingly, the Nets did not suspend him. The Nets did nothing. They didn't suspend him or nothing. Public outcry. Now they suspended him for 5 games. Like a week or two later, and part of it was that he wasn't returning the text and calls of the owner. Never a good idea to not return text and calls from
your boss, right?
That's never going to end well for you. But then the Nets came up with I'm going to look at him now, with a list of 6 things that Kyrie has to do in order to be reinstated to the team. Apologizing again the film he promoted, make a $500,000 donation to anti-hate causes, complete sensitivity training, complete any anti-Semitism training, meet with the ADL and Jewish leaders, and meet with team owner Joe Tsai to demonstrate understanding. Yeah, I mean, so film he promoted. So nowadays, if you tweet something, it's the default is you're promoting it, right? You're not, unless you say this is horrible, people will assume that you're promoting it. So that's
right.
That's fair. But this list of demands smacks of something else, other than just purely, we're trying to get Kyrie right. It has a condescending, controlling sort of feel to it. Now, to your point about freedom of speech, we do have freedom of speech, but freedom of speech, I'd love to hear from people who are watching. Freedom of speech does have limits. Like, to your point, it's not free. Like, free speech does not mean free from consequences. That just means you can say whatever you want. But the consequences that come from saying whatever you want can be real and immediate.
Right.
So I think with free speech, you also have to, know your environment and sort of act accordingly. Like, that if you say something or tweet something out like that, what's coming. You have to know. This is not new. This is like decades of this kind of thing. When people say something that is considered anti-Semitic, and the response is always the ADL, the other Jewish organizations who do this kind of work. They come out immediately and in concert, and it's coming. So no one should be surprised at that level of thing. And at some level, no one should be surprised by the Nets, because the Nets are running a business that caters to other people, all people, including Jewish people.
Right.
So they're in business to serve customers. They're in the business to run people away. But again, it seems like overkill. And I think we have a clip. A former basketball player, Jay Williams, makes some good points about sort of the way that this went down. It's 1 minute and 30 seconds, but I think it's worth listening to. So let's take a peek, and then we'll come back, finish up the conversation.
So when I hear what Kyrie Irving has to go through in order to be reinstated, I'm appalled. And let me give you examples of how I feel like we don't have the same energy and hold other people who have dealt with racial tropes accountable. So when Sarah Silverman does blackface, or when Don Imus says nappy-headed hose, or when Howard Stern calls somebody the N-word in the skit, or when Brett Favre takes money from the state of Mississippi, we don't ask them to get sensitivity training. We don't ask them to donate $500,000. We don't ask them to meet with the Black National Caucus. They apologize, and then you know what? The rest of the world moves on. But what I feel like is happening here, and that's how in the Black community, like, we've been told that's how the process works, right? Think about that, Bert. That's how the process works. Oh, somebody does a blackface. Oh, it was a misunderstanding. We got it. Okay. Is that person really racist? Probably not. Was it ignorant? Probably so. Okay, we understand it. We move forward. We don't like it. We would love to hold them accountable. But society and having a lot of black people in positions of power, we don't have the governability to do that. But what we feel like happens with Kyrie is even after an apology, it's not enough. We feel like there needs to be more.
Well said.
He makes a lot of good points, especially the part about black people don't have the juice to do that, right? In order to cancel people at that level, like not that we couldn't cancel anybody, but at that level, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and worldwide. We don't have the juice to do that,
right?
And so his point was, when the black community is offended, we get an apology, and he's right. The world moves on. That's the
absolutely
end. Apology is all you need to do. Now you may still get fired. I think Don Imus did eventually get fired, but on the whole, that was mostly because he was talking about teenage girls, young.
I was just about to say it, right.
If he'd been adult, I don't think he would have been fired. It's because it was college-aged young women really did him in, but to his point, usually an apology will suffice, and you just keep on rolling on. Lots of good points, but on the other hand, that still doesn't excuse what you do. Like, that's not, they pull you over for going 85. You say, well, that guy was going 90.
Right.
That sort of doesn't work there, and it sort of in some ways doesn't work here, because we still have to be cognizant of the things that you say and do, knowing what the repercussions may be before you say it, and acting accordingly. And I don't think that that's outrageous, but I do think you've seen with Kyrie two very different reactions to a similar thing. He said he did something that people felt was racially insensitive, and now he's got to jump through quite a few hoops and come out of his pocket. Now he's got money, so the $500,000 is not a ton of money to him, but it's still like money. Like $500,000 is not something you just like laugh off. Like, that's serious money. And he was suspended 5 games without pay. So I'm sure that's another good 6-figure chunk of change out of it. And what they're saying is, we're forcing you to do all these things to prove to us that you're, I don't know, sorry, the apology's not enough. I don't know what they're trying to make an example out of him, so the next person doesn't know. None of the other people better get out of line. I'm not sure if it's that. It seemed it doesn't feel right.
I'll be honest with you. I think that what you have there is their sincere desire to know that he has changed, right? His sincere desire to know that he has reformed. Each one of those steps. Some of those are punitive, but some of those end with, I need to make sure you got training, that you understand it. I think it, so which by itself, in and of itself, if that's the process, that's not necessarily a negative process. I think the problem is, it's not the process that we see with us. It's the process that we see with the LGBTQ community.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, you definitely you better get some training. You have to meet with some people. You have to go down there and put on a dress. You have to do something with the LGBTQ community to prove to them that the Jewish community.
Right.
This doesn't make his point about Jews, or Ye's point about Jews, but let's recognize that the idea that he did offend this group, and in offending this group, there is this great outcry. Listen, you denied that 9/11 existed, denied the idea that we went to the moon, and people say you're crazy. Tell me that the earth is flat, and people say you're crazy. Deny the Holocaust, and now it's like, no, you can't work here anymore. You can't make that speech. We're going to do your passport is stamped. So there's something here in terms of our desire to protect the Jewish community that is absolutely evident, and our loathing to punish the Jewish community, with the number of people who have done the blackface, the number of years that Howard Stern was able to get away with open racism. What you saw in Hollywood and what you saw in comedy stores that were wide open racism that was right there that they were able to get away with. There is something here about how we feel about Jewish angst. and other angst and black angst. And black angst just means zero. You know, you guys need to get over it. What he said, the N-word, listen, you know, trust me, we'll take care of it. Mm-hmm. But like once he says, he issues that little apology, the world now says, what else you guys want? We want you to do what you did with Kyrie.
Yeah, and the issue with that, to part of his point was that, but who are you going to meet with? What groups? What centralized groups we have? Right there. We can say you got to meet with this group. You got to go to this place. Who's the group? Where's the place?
Right.
There is no group. There is no place. So that there's a lack of cohesiveness in our community that makes that virtually impossible.
Well, listen, we're just not a cohesive block that has the power to force. You know what I mean? There's money in the black community, no doubt about it. There's power in the black community, but because we're so disjointed, we're not together in one. You know, I mean, the Jews, they're a smaller minority. They're a small minority in the world.
Yeah.
Let alone a small minority in the country. Look at the power, and that power comes from unity. Asian community is powerful in America, and they're a very small minority, but they're powerful because of their unity. What you're seeing here is a lack of unity. And so the unfairness, the ability to take a player like Kyrie Irving, who didn't say it, but retweeted it.
Retweeted it.
And, and cost him $1 million for a retweet.
Well, he lost a deal too. So he lost his deal with Nike or wherever.
Nike, so now we're talking. So all of that, the economic destruction that is designed in this process is designed to destroy people who come against that idea. But there's absolutely nothing in the economic package for blackface. There's nothing for the N-word.
Just, clean it off and get you an apology.
Yeah, and the movie still. You're still in the movie.
Yeah,
you're still gonna make a movie. They didn't we had to stop production. Now, it's crazy. Black person does something like that, we gotta stop production. We gotta find a new character. No, they're still in the movie. So it says a lot about racism in America, and it says a lot about the bamboozling of that. This is our process. Yeah, they're right. This is the process. We've just accepted it and decided, you're right. When we say something like that, we do have to go through. Kanye really needs to be, just kind of drawn through the mud. Because of who he talked against. But when Kanye said that about black people, notice that there's nobody said what do you mean slavery was a choice? But we saw it, Kanye. Now many people here weren't there for the Holocaust, but they believe it. We saw George Floyd. He said he wasn't really on his neck like that. He had all the time to say a prayer. So all of that, nobody said, you owe us an apology. You know why? Because there's no us.
There's no us.
Go to Drink Champs. Maybe that's the us. Maybe that's Nori. Maybe he's the us. Go talk to Diddy. Maybe that's the us. No, the truth of the matter is there's really no us. And if there's any wake-up call, that's that.
Yeah, without any us, you just lack the ability to hold people accountable in the way that you might want to for the things that they do and say about or against your community. You're sort of, it's sad, but you're sort of helpless because to your point, there's no group. And I think depending on your point of view, the beauty of it is that these groups, these Jewish groups, don't necessarily agree with each other all the time.
Right.
But they do agree that if you say something they consider anti-Semitic, you've talked about all of them, regardless of if they're conservative or Hasidic or whatever it may be, matters not even a little bit. You say something anti-Semitic, they all have the same response, regardless. We got to agree on 100 things before we'll say, I can work with you, brother. You can't. That's just how we are. It's from slavery, right? The splitting up and the breaking up and the keeping us separate and keeping us divided. And it continues to this day where you see, we should be able to come together quite easily and say, if you don't, this is what's going to happen. Here's who you got to meet with. You got to pay $500,000. I mean, could you imagine somebody having to pay a black organization $500,000 cash money? Could you imagine that? Could you imagine that?
It's unbelievable.
Somebody tweeting something and then having to write a check for $500,000 to the whatever group, NAACP or whatever. Could you imagine that? That would never happen because the person wouldn't write the check. They would be like, you kidding?
Right.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll make a PSA. I'll go on, whatever, and say, I'm deeply sorry for any hurt I caused any people, but they're not going to write no checks.
You better believe it. You better believe it.
And then they're doing a long tour. It's like, I'll do 1 or 2. And I got to get back to, the set.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a shame. That's America.
It is America. We have one more comment and we're just about out of time. Clarice says, we can't ask for more than an apology without being called crybabies and wanting too much. Well, that's part of the dynamic, is that they said they were sorry. What do you want? We have affirmative action. We have all this stuff. We have programs for you. What do you want, other than what they've already done? And if you can't force them to do it, the main way people do it is threatening their economics. Then you can't really do it. They just sit back and say, I'll wait you out. Now, some of them not going to be able to do that. Some people can get fired, and just depending on the circumstances.
Right.
These are minor bit players, like the real stars, the real CEOs, the real people who are at the top of the heap. They're not. No, we can't cancel them. We can't. No, we just can't.
Right. No, absolutely not. And again, there's no mechanism for us to do it. I think it just shows us again just where we are. Kyrie is he's a world-renowned basketball player. He's a millionaire. Kanye West. I don't know whether you think he's a genius or not, but he's certainly well-known musical figure.
Sure.
And the idea that they can be dragged through the mud in this way for ideas that they didn't create, ideas that are out there, the books that they didn't write, that they just read, and facts that they didn't create. They're just reciting. The idea that you can be dragged through the mud and canceled and destroyed, yet that's not across the board, really shows us some of the dynamics of racism that's really in America, that we are looked upon. And one of the easiest things is you guys need to learn how to forgive. And that's what we're told. You let it go. You still hold on to that. It was just one word. It's the N word. It's one word. Right. Let it go. Yet here, a retweet, there's a 6-step process with the knowledge that he probably won't complete it. And I think, was that Mark Stein who said that this was kind of concocted with the knowledge that he would not complete all 6 steps. This is, you're almost kind of saying we kind of knew this was our way of ousting this big mouth from getting him out of the league. And Kyrie Irving was a big mouth in so many other areas before. Wow, we want him out now because he's a big mouth with this group.
Yeah, and that's we talked about earlier, but that's a line you can't cross. I mean, that's a line where if you cross, then you have a 6-step process. Right. If if you're fortunate, others get canceled indefinitely or for some extended period of time. But again, it's part of the dynamic of this country that we're left with, suck it up and take the apology and can we just move on? I mean, it happened a week ago, it happened 2 weeks ago. Why can't we just get past it? And the irony is, one of the things that the clip of Jay Williams is like 10 or 12 minutes, but one of the things he pointed out was that the link that Kyrie sent out is still available. Like you can still, if you wanted to, you can still use the link. Right. Go watch the movie. He got canceled. I mean, he's like, how does that make any sense? How come Amazon, where the thing is, how come they're not being canceled?
Right, absolutely.
It's a good question. I mean, we know the answer, but it's a good question.
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Jay Williams has to face some consequences for overall fairly mild, right? It was a fairly mild offense. It wasn't like he went crazy. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's, some consequences for him. He mentioned maybe he loses a deal or two. Maybe they cut back his assignments. I don't know on TV. I don't know, but I wouldn't be shocked if that were to happen at all.
Sure, absolutely. Listen, that's the price for the revolution.
That is the price.
Colin Kaepernick. Unfortunately,
yeah.
we're seeing the price. The prices that were paid from Frederick Douglass. I mean, you just go all the way down the road up to now. The price is still being paid, and it's the price of your life, your well-being, your general happiness. That's the cost of the revolution in this country. And so we're really just seeing modern day revolutionaries in some ways paying the price that a Harriet Tubman would have paid. You know, the same price that anybody who rebelled against the slave master would have. There's a price for that, for that liberty. So in some ways, we're really seeing that. Like, it's not dead.
Right.
It's not gone. Harry Belafonte paid a price for speaking out in the 60s. Well, the same Harry Belafontes are here now who are saying, "Why? I mean, I can't think the way I want to think. I can't say you don't cancel the Klan." David Duke was able to run for president, but you don't cancel a guy with a pointy white hat. And yet the guy who says, "I'm just going to retweet that."
Right. No.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. And I don't think we can close any better than that. I mean, we can close on David.
Yes, sir.
Oh, my goodness. Man. That's just thinking about that is just driving me crazy. But yeah, we'll continue to talk about these kinds of things. I mean, that's what we do. But yeah, this was a good conversation. Thoroughly enjoyed it. But we got to keep talking about these things because you can't really address and properly, deal with the problem if you just keep going on like it's not.
That's right.
It's not a real thing. We just say Kyrie stupidly shouldn't have said it, but that's really beside the point.
Yes,
that's another conversation. Like whether he should or should not. He did say it, and now we're dealing with the repercussions he faced as opposed to repercussions that other people face when they come against our community. So
that's right.
Great conversation, man. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Me too.
And we'll be back next week at 7 p.m. Thanks everyone who joined, who commented. You can always go on YouTube and Facebook, do a search for Pastor Noise. If you're watching this later, you can watch our other 17 episodes and you can comment and we'll respond to the comments. We'd love to hear what your thoughts about what the topics we've covered are, and looking forward to it. So thank you, good night, and God bless.
God bless. Take care.